对不起，今天的 technical issues 太多了，很抱歉。
没办法，这个高级数很复杂。
Yeah, the technology is complicated. That's what Albert just said. All right, so tell us a little bit about your Chinese learning journey.
Well, when I got to China, I was doing everything I could to try to learn Chinese. So I was using dictionaries, and I had a little cassette recorder that I was recording a friend of mine. You know, I would write things down in Pinyin and say, "Can you please read that?" And I would record it and try to, imitate his pronunciation.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you do now in China?
Well, I've been teaching English at a college. That's what I've been doing the whole time, actually.
Mm-hmm. And since Albert is actually a really good course designer, and some of the audience actually are Yoyo Chinese members, and you probably have watched the Yoyo Chinese grammar lessons and intermediate lessons, and Albert is one of the active voices behind those courses. So and today, if you have any questions regarding what goes behind how we create each course and each lesson, you can also ask him. So let me ask you this question: what's your favorite Chinese word or phrases, right?
Favorite Chinese word? That's a funny question. Well, I like 差不多 a lot.
差不多, okay, 差不多.
If you don't know that, it means, are you going to write it down?
Yeah, I'm going to write it down.
If you don't know 差不多, it means pretty much or kind of more or less. It can be used in lots of situations. And I just like it because it's just sounds cool. 差不多. There it is there. So,
差不多 is I think it's perfect for someone who's is not very exact, right? Everything is about yeah, more or less, about right. 差不多, right?
Right. In
Okay.
fact, it's also used in some situations. Like I was playing ping pong with a little kid, and his mom said, "Okay, 差不多了." Like that's pretty much all the time we have for that, and the kid understood. Okay, and he left there. So it's pretty flexible, and I just like the way it sounds.
Okay, so you learn something that's actually very common. I say that, yeah, 差不多. Like if I don't want to say that's the exact, like that, I'm absolutely sure I would just always say 差不多, right?
It means kind of.
Kind of. Yeah, exactly.
I also like 舍不得.
舍不得.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say. So
舍不得 is...
oh, it's so cute, this word.
Yeah, it's hard to translate into English because some people translate it as like reluctant to part with something. So you could say, yeah, 很舍不得你 means I don't want you to go, or I'm reluctant for you to go. Actually, I actually gave a student a piece of candy as a prize once, and then I came back later and she still hadn't eaten it, and I said, well, why haven't you eaten this candy yet? And she said, 舍不得. She just said one word.
Actually, you do hear the 舍不得 word spoken a lot in the Chinese songs, the Chinese love songs. 我舍不得你，你舍不得我, or something like that.
Everybody 舍不得
right?
everybody in this.
Exactly,
Yeah,
舍不得.
exactly.
So, well, just for so now say 舍不得, 舍不得. Okay, let's do the 差不多 again. 差不多. 差不多.
I just realized they have something in common. They both have boo in the middle.
And this is actually a Chinese grammar point, right? It's a potential compliment. And actually, we just had this one blog article. Julie wrote that about the potential compliment. For example, when you first start learning Chinese, you always say 听不懂, right? When people speak really fast to you, that's exactly the same structure. You know, 听 is the verb. 懂 is the complement. 听不懂, I cannot understand. 差不多, which actually literally means cannot be too far from the much. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but just don't worry about it. It just means more or less.
Not everything translates really well.
Exactly.
Just remember it.
Exactly. You know, well, today we really just want to spend more time on answering people's questions.
Okay.
You can ask any questions start from, how to say something or how to pronounce something, what's the learning strategies. Albert is very, very good at informing students about the best way of learning Chinese, right? One thing I want to let you guys know that Albert can read Chinese characters really well, right? You can text, you can email people, but he has never really learned how to write a single character. And also, one of the Albert's Chinese learning philosophies is that delay character learning, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I suppose I should clarify that I use the characters a lot now, but at the beginning I really didn't deal with the characters at all. I just totally focused on Pinyin, which traditional Chinese teaching will tell you is wrong. You've got to learn how to write ni hao the same day you learn how to say ni hao. And ni hao, there's actually kind of complicated characters, and I just thought I just don't have the energy to do the characters and the speaking and listening. So I just focused on the 口语, on the speaking and listening.
Right, exactly. Actually, that's my philosophy as well, because I really think that trying to learn characters and learn spoken Chinese at the same time at the beginning is like tackling two languages at the same time. It really
it's a little much.
Yeah, too much too early on. But we're not saying that you cannot learn characters, right? If you have the time, if you have your major is Chinese,
right,
by all means do so. Right?
If you have the energy to do it. But what I didn't want was to just feel really discouraged because I'm not doing everything. Don't be discouraged. Feel free not to do everything. And if you have to pick something, then put the characters to the side first. And then later when you go to learn them, they'll be easier. If you can do them both, go ahead.
Absolutely.
But if you can't, then feel free to just ditch the characters for a while.
Right. Okay. So should we just answer some questions?
Sure. Do we have some here?
Yeah, we have. Okay. So we already have a bunch of questions. Okay. All right. So the first question, let's take this one. From Jacob. Oh, by the way, if you are on YouTube, please click on the our Google event page. That will take you to the page where you can actually ask questions live. You will be able to see the questions on the right-hand side by clicking the Q&A little button on the video. All right, so that's where you're supposed to be. Okay. Another thing. When you ask a question, if you want to write Chinese characters, try to write Pinyin as well, because some students really just don't read characters. But I do want everybody to be able to read your questions. Okay, cool. All right. So why don't we just start with the first question? The first question comes from Jacob. Jacob says, "I'm currently trying to teach myself Chinese through textbooks and YouTube videos, but how can I make sure that my pronunciation is 100% correct when I don't have a native speaker helping me? I don't want to learn to speak incorrectly. Please help." All right.
Good one.
Thanks, Jacob, for your question. So for me, my answer would be, now we're living in a world where the internet is everywhere, right? And you don't necessarily have to be in China or be surrounded by native Chinese speakers to be able to practice Chinese. I can recommend some resources. For example, there's a website called italki. It's italki.com. I think this is a site where you can actually find someone to do language exchange for free. But the thing, you have to teach them English. You speak English to them for half an hour, and then they'll speak Chinese back to you for half an hour. It's an exchange. But if you don't want to do that, you can pay like a few dollars an hour. Sometimes it's very affordable to actually practice and learn with the actual Chinese tutors from China. So the site is called italki, and I think it's a very good site. And also, I know in different North American cities, you can have meetups, or I know there are lots of tutors that are offering services on Craigslist. So I think that all these resources are available for you to go out and practice. I do think that the most important thing about learning language is to start speaking from the very first day. Even if you can just say hello and ni hao, and just go ahead and use it.
Well, yeah, and Jacob is right that how can you make sure your pronunciation is 100% correct without a native speaker? You really can't. You really need that feedback from the native speaker. And so whatever you have to do to find the native speaker, these are some good ideas. But yeah, it would be I don't know. I guess if you have an incredible ear, then you can do it. But really, the native speaker feedback is what you need.
Yeah, I think there's something that can help, which is that, you know, for Pinyin, there are 400 something sounds and 4 tones. If you really can master the 4 tones at the beginning, you can pretty much guarantee that you will pronounce the tones later on. So my suggestion is that you want to spend more time really just really hanging on your pinyin at the very beginning and make sure it's correct. And then later you can maybe don't really have to worry about so much about your pronunciation anymore.
That is true. After about my first year or so, I don't think I had any more pronunciation questions. Probably earlier than that, actually. So the nice thing about Chinese, as opposed to some other languages like, oh, I don't know, English, is you see the pinyin written down is always the same.
Yes.
It's not like English spelling where some words like laugh. Why is laugh spelled like that?
I have a student who I really, when I was tutoring Chinese, I made sure all his pronunciations are correct. He can really read pinyin really correctly. And then later, just like 1 month later, I asked him to read a big, long passage full of pinyin, and he just reads it. He doesn't know what it means, but he sounds like a native.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can actually do that if you just master these like 400-something pronunciation with the 4 tones, which definitely can be done if you put more energy at the beginning.
Right.
Right? Okay.
That was a good question.
Thank you, Jacob. Done. Okay. The next question. Let's see. We're good now. Okay, let's.
Oh, good. People told us the sound was broken.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. 对不起. Okay, the next one comes from David. Hello. Okay. It was incomprehensible. Okay, now some problems. Okay. All right. All right. This question comes from Stuart. Stuart asked, guys, do you have any tips for a newbie who's struggling with getting tones right on how to improve this? I struggle to make my 4th and 2nd tones hearable, I guess. You want to answer that? Okay,
well, yeah, Stuart, that's a great question also. And it's good that you've narrowed it down to 2nd and 4th tones, because
actually most people will have problems with 2nd and 3rd tones, that's right? Especially the 3rd tones.
Well, the more specific you can label your problem, the more specific you can find a solution for that problem. So let's see. You're trying to make your 4th and 2nd tones hearable. Okay, so I would suggest this. A typical approach for pronunciation is first, can you hear it, and then can you say it? So let's see if, Stuart, if you can hear the 2nd and the 4th tones correctly, and then if you can, then we can move on to the very next stage. But if you can't even hear and guess, oh, that's a 2nd tone, that's a 4th tone, if you're not guessing correct like 9 out of 10 times, then that's probably the first problem to tackle. Right, exactly. So let's say the 2nd tone is actually very simple. It's something that you already have in English. Like when you say what, pretty much anytime you're raising your word, right? Raising your tones, you're saying 2nd tone. What, right? That's the 2nd tone. And the 4th tone is very emphatic. So when you say no, right? That's what is 2nd tone. No is the 4th tone, right? And yeah, but if we wanted to give Stuart some tips, I would say, Stuart, if you're talking about how to make your 4th and 2nd tone easier for other people to hear, start your 4th tone way higher than you think you need to. So like, what do we have? Like, 圣诞快乐. You know, that's 4 4th tones in a row. It's Merry Christmas, but it sounds funny because it sounds like you're shouting it. Yeah. So this is a great phrase to practice your 4th tone, because when you say Merry Christmas, you're literally shouting 圣诞快乐. No, it doesn't sound very merry, but it is. So my suggestion is to start the 4th tone way higher than you think you should. So you might be saying 圣诞快乐, and really we want to do 圣诞快乐, like really big gap instead of just a little one, to exaggerate it. I think that's a great tip, because you always want to exaggerate at the very beginning, and later when you get lazy and comfortable, and then you actually slip back to how you normally say it, right? At the beginning, do start higher. 圣诞快乐, right? Right, exactly. Do that. And for 2nd tone, my tip is to start higher. So what do you have a little 2nd tone word here? Yeah, sure. You can do 明年 next year. Yeah, 明年. Let me grab a card. Okay. So 明年 is next year. Don't say 明年. It's the opposite tip from the 4th tone. Start high and just go a little bit. 明 nian, like that.
Let me write it real quick.
So, and I also personally, I make my second tones shorter. Like I try to say it faster. Ming, nian, because then that doesn't give people time to get confused about it.
I really suggest, each time you say the second tone, you're like, what, huh, ming nian. And then you hear yourself say that in English and you apply to it. It's easier, right?
Yeah. So those are a few tips just off the top of our head.
Why don't we just practice a pair with the second and fourth tone, right? So this is how you say easy in Chinese. 容易. Like when you say no, right? 容易. 容易. Easy. So that's an example.
Which is ironic because maybe it's not easy.
容易不容易容易吗不容易
有一点容易 It's a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay. Well, I hope that answered your question about fourth tone and second tone. Since we're talking about tones, should we just go a little bit? Let's go a little bit further with the tones, right? Usually, most people have the problem with the third tone because they say, okay, this is the thing. I think most teachers teach the third tone as if it was the bouncing tone, right? Like right? That's what most textbooks and teachers have been teaching. But the problem the students have with this is that they say, I don't really hear it first. And then when I say it, it's almost impossible to say. And so actually, as a matter of fact, in reality, the third tone is just a low tone. It's like when you say, what are you going to, what did you have for lunch yesterday? You say, so you go to the lowest point of your voice range and stay there for half a second. That's the third tone. Right?
Well, and also in English, when I'm talking in English, I'm using this much of my range. And Chinese actually goes up here for the fourth tone and the first tone, and down here for the third tone. So I usually don't use this part of my voice when I'm speaking English. I'm up here right now, but if I wanted to use it, I would come down here. And that's kind of where the third tone goes.
Exactly. The third tone is not really 容易 的
right.
sound to make.
It's lower than you're used to going.
Yeah, so that's the third tone. Cool. I hope that answered your question. And the first tone is really, really fun, right? That's your favorite tone.
I love a good first tone because it's up there. You just sing it out. 飞机, like airplane.
Yeah, we have that. Just let me show that.
Flying in the sky with the first tone.
Right, 飞机. So that's first tone. 飞机, it's like someone asks you, would you like to help me move tomorrow? You say, maybe. 飞机, 飞机, maybe. 飞机.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a robot.
Yeah.
飞机.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so okay, I'm going to mark this as done. Okay. Next one. This question comes from Antonio, and Antonio says, "Hi guys, I'm Antonio from Spain. First of all, congratulations for your excellent learning system. Thank you so much. Have you ever heard about the sentence mining as a studying system? Do you recommend this in order to improve quickly your vocabulary?" Sentence mining. Maybe are you talking about the SRS, like space repetition system, or?
I don't think he is. Sentence mining, I haven't really heard of it. So we could sit here and we could guess what it is, which might be fun, but I'm assuming it's learning sentences altogether.
Yeah, if you can just, Antonio, if you can just specify what this is, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, write another question about that and then we'll know more.
All right, thanks. Okay, next one. Next one comes from Jimmy. Jimmy says, "I've just found out about Wade."
Yeah, Wade Giles.
Wade Giles and Zhuyin. Are these better tools to use when learning to speak Chinese, or is it better to just use Pinyin? To be very honest, I'm not exactly familiar with the other two systems, but I just know that Pinyin is one of the most commonly used systems to transcribe the Chinese sounds. Right?
Yeah, well, Wade Giles is old, and you don't need to learn it. It's like when you see Mao Zedong, written with a T
that's what it is.
instead of Mao Zedong. It's an old system, and it was fine at the time, but Pinyin has replaced it.
Gotcha.
And then Zhuyin, I don't know who's using that. The two kinds of Pinyin are on mainland and in Taiwan.
Right.
And those are similar, but they're not exactly the same. So learn the Pinyin for the place that you're planning to deal with, whether it's people around you here in your own country or you're going to that country. Learn that Pinyin. But I would not recommend Wei, Giles, or Juyin.
Yeah, and also lots of people think that Pinyin is something that only foreigners are learning. That's not true. Actually, Pinyin is something that when we first start learning Chinese, we learn Pinyin in elementary school. So everybody in China, in mainland China, knows how to write Pinyin. Yeah, so that will help you communicate with them as well. And
place names now on international maps, place names are written in Pinyin, and the place names in Taiwan are written in their Tongyong Pinyin. So at the very least, use the Pinyin that the map is written in.
Right, okay. Next one. Oh, next one comes from Matthew. Matthew says, hello, Yangyang. What's the best way to learn Chinese characters? Do I have to learn all the radicals first, or can I just learn characters as it is? Also, is it better to become proficient at Pinyin first before starting with Hanzi, or to do both together? That's a great question, Matthew.
Yeah, it's about 3 questions there. First of all, let's talk about, is it better to become proficient in Pinyin first before starting with Hanzi? Yeah, I would say yes, because it would not take very long to become proficient in Pinyin.
Mm-hmm.
And starting the characters, well, start them anytime. Start whenever you feel like it, but Pinyin is a much easier thing to learn. Now, what is the best way to learn Chinese characters? Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. That's what everybody wants to know. And do I have to learn the radicals first, or can I just learn the character as it is? Radicals are useful. And there's another thing called components. So there's 部首 and there's 部件.
Right. I think for beginners, they don't really distinguish 部首 and 部件 too much.
Right.
But I do think I see what you're saying. Absolutely. I really think that learning characters is learning like a building block language. You want to learn the basic ones and you put them in a different position in relative to each other, and that's how you learn characters. So lots of people, before they learn characters, they get scared because they think characters is this completely random system that just with strokes and pictures. It's not. Actually, Chinese characters do follow a certain logic, and that logic is that you need to have a certain component, and you put them together, and different components, they add together. They add to the meaning, they add to the sound, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that is the best way to start with radicals, and then go to the single component Chinese character, and then compound component Chinese characters.
Yeah, and so if you don't know what radicals are, if you're watching, radical is like just a little character, and then a big character, like a Chinese character, is always a square, right? In the square, there could be maybe 4 different radicals all stuck together, or more.
For example, just a quick introduction. So, this part will be a radical, and you will see this part shown appear in many different characters that carries the same meaning, right? So it contributes to the same meaning with the same sound. So you do want to learn a character because you will see it many more times after.
Yeah, so in answer to your question, yeah, learn what the little pieces mean.
Okay. All right, thanks, Matthew. All right. Next question. How do we know when "de" takes on the "de" pronunciation or the "d" pronunciation?
It's a good question. It's kind of like, how do you know when to say produce, and how do you know when to say produce?
Right. The person is talking about the most commonly used Chinese character or sound "de." How de, or ni de, your, my, what de, that "de," right? That's we call it apostrophe s "de," right?
Mm-hmm.
The zhāng de is zhāng's. But sometimes the when "de" is used in a word like 的确. This is, I think, more of like a advanced sort of level.
Yeah.
Kind of character, right?
It's usually "de." That's the short answer.
Yeah,
it's usually "de" and not "d."
Yeah. Why don't I just answer the question real quick? For example, in this specific word, that indeed, it means indeed. That's 的确. For now, I can't really think of any other word that has this "de" that is pronounced as "d."
Well, 目的.
Oh, 目的.
Goal or destination.
Right. Goal or destination. That's 目的. It's funny, like most of our students don't really read characters, but I need to write this right now.
Yeah, this only becomes a question if you've learned the character before the pinyin for it.
目的 means objective or goal, right?
Mhm.
What's your 目的? Where are you driving towards?
Right.
目的. It's a simple pronunciation word. Cool.
So yeah, it's kind of hard to predict, but just learn it. It's usually duh, unless the dictionary says that it's D.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Robert. Okay. Next one. Next one comes from Carmel. Carmel says, is there a cartoon or children's show that you can recommend to help with listening comprehension? You know, the first thing that comes to my mind is SpongeBob with SquarePants. Actually, it's dubbed in Chinese.
Oh, really?
It's not even dubbed in Chinese. They even match the Chinese words with the music completely. But that's too difficult.
Yeah. Now, Carmel, I'm thinking of like a Sesame Street sort of thing in Chinese, and I have never seen that. That would be great. But all the kids' shows that I've ever seen are these really fast-talking, like robots fighting each other, and they're talking about, you know, the Cybertron, you know, like what is that word anyway? It's hard. Even for me, it's hard to understand Chinese cartoons sometimes because they're just kind of obscure characters and things. So.
Actually, I want to point out one thing. Sometimes people think that by listening to children's show, you can actually pick up simpler Chinese, but that's not always true.
Right.
Because children speak in a very different way than how adults speak. So that's not necessarily the most efficient route, I think.
Yeah, and again, if it were like a Sesame Street show where it's really repetitive and they're like teaching children things, if you can find that, please email us, because then we will also recommend that to people.
Yeah.
But just normal cartoons, they're a little bit too fast and a little bit too kind of obscure with some of their characters and vocabulary, I found.
Yeah, I agree. All right, thanks, Carmel. Let's move on to the next question.
Now, I think we're missing some. Scroll up this bar here.
Oh.
Scroll. Yeah, see, there's a...
Oh, okay.
There's some...
Okay, this person. Okay, this person, Matthew asked, what's the correct way to pronounce zhen? I'm not sure to pronounce the zh as J or L. Whenever I try to say it, my Chinese girlfriend and her family say I'm wrong. Okay.
Well, first of all, let me say I sympathize with whenever I say something, everybody tells me I'm wrong. And they also probably don't tell you how to say it right. They don't tell you what's wrong about it, right? That happens to me all the time. So thank you for your question.
So how do you have a? So I actually taught this before about the zh sound because I know actually Albert lives in Guangzhou. People from the southern part of China, they pronounce the R sound as almost like run, right? Run, like very similar to the American R sound, right?
Well, and you'll hear even stranger things. Some of them will say it like a Y.
Oh, really? Yan? Oh, because in Cantonese, you know, like, ren is yan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why. Okay, so...
But we don't want you to do that. Don't say it like that.
So, Matthew, this is a trick, okay? Think of this is how I teach my students. So, think of the zh sound. It's like a very French sound. It sounds like the zh from Jacques, or zh from Asia, or zh from measure. So, that is the zh sound you want to make. Asia, zh. Measure, zh. Jacques, zh. So that's R is pronounced as. So together, zhen is zhen, zh. En is like N as in taken, you know, like I've taken your courses before or something like that. That's N. So zh plus N, and we give a second tone like, what?
Right. And let me show you something else you can do, Matthew. I'm going to demonstrate a way that I use to check my pronunciation when there's a question like this. So here's the native speaker here, and I'm going to be you. So this is what I want you to tell me. I'm going to say it two ways, and you tell me which is better, number 1 or number 2. Okay. Ready? Zhen, ren.
The first one.
Okay. And now I'm going to try it again, and I'm going to switch it just to check and see if she's... But I won't tell her that. Okay, ready? Number 1, ren. Number 2, zhen.
Second one.
Okay, so that confirms what I think is right, that the second, that kind of buzzing zh one is better. And you can use that trick to a certain extent. You can try it with your girlfriend and her family. And it'll be really funny if they contradict each other. Then you know to just disregard, because that happens sometimes. And the other thing that'll happen is they might not be able to hear the difference. Sometimes we can hear differences that they can't hear, and they can hear differences we can't hear.
Actually, there is something like people constantly saying E, you know, like the number 1 E, right? The Americans always ask me, say, is it like E or E, right?
Yeah.
Or like the W sound. Do you say, number 5 is like W or W, right?
Right.
Like, do you really make that W sound really, really strong? For me, for our Chinese ears, it's not as we don't really emphasize that much.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've done the same thing before. I say, okay, what's better, number 1, number 2? E or Ye? And they go, what's the difference?
Exactly.
So that's a good test you can use to see if it's actually very important or if they're just giving you a hard time.
So yeah, just when it comes to Y and W, don't spend so much time on, saying unnecessary. 不用,不用.
Right.
Okay.
But use that 1-2 exercise if you want to check things.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew. Okay. Okay, let's do the next one.
Okay.
The next question comes from Kurt. Kurt says, my daughter in Mandarin immersion school for a few years say my tones are too careful and I sound unnatural. Should I focus more on listening to / imitating whole phrases to get the tones in context?
Hey, well, first of all, congratulations, Kurt. You're too careful. You're doing the tones too well. That's the error. That's the side we want to err on, right?
Yep.
What would you say to Kurt about that? Do you think he should just go whole phrases, or do you think?
I think I'm just making an assumption here. I think that you probably are just start learning Chinese for not too long, right? And you're really exaggerating the sound. Of course, when you exaggerate, it doesn't sound natural. But that's a great way to practice tones at the very beginning. I cannot emphasize how important it is to exaggerate your sounds, even though at the expense of sounding unnatural. It's worth it. So just tell your daughter, just bear with me for a little bit. And if you think that, just forget about the unnatural part. If you think I'm wrong, tell me. But if it's unnatural, let me be.
That's a good point. Draw a distinction between wrong and not normal sounding. And so, like here's an example I often use. There it is. If we're teaching this to kids, we might say water bottle. But when we're speaking normal speech in American English, we say water bottle, water bottle. So if we hear somebody who's always saying, I need a water bottle, we'll say, what are you doing? That sounds kind of unnatural. Well, is it wrong? Well, it's not wrong exactly. Well, then okay. Then just leave it alone, and I suspect that later those will start to get more natural on their own.
Yeah. I just want to give you a quick example of myself. When I first started learning English, I would pronounce everything really, really clear, like, what are you doing, right? But now I would say, what you doing, right? And people say, ooh. So
Right.
it really, you have to go through that process of, go through the process.
Well, and another question is, how old is your daughter, and is she really qualified to make this sort of a comment? It's possible that she's exactly right, that it sounds unnatural, but I want to be careful who I ask for suggestions, because there's lots of times when everybody's got a suggestion, they contradict each other, so who do you trust?
Yeah.
And your daughter might be spot on, but it's good to get a second opinion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kurt. Next question. Next question comes from Victoria. Victoria says, hi, when learning Chinese, is it more efficient to learn phrases than just learning individual words?
It depends on what efficient means.
I think phrases, individual words, I treat them the same. I give them the same kind of level of attention. But but what I don't think is a good idea is to say the individual character. For example, like 你好. I do think that you want to practice them in words, so you don't pronounce the words, each individual character in isolation. Because all the tones are relative to each other, right?
Well, this is a little bit like Kurt's question, because this is talking about learning bigger chunks as opposed to smaller chunks. And I say, yeah, do both. If you learn a big chunk, like, excuse me, can you please tell me how to get to the train station, make sure that you also know what each of those words are, in case you want to change train station to be bus stop, then you know which word to take out and which word to put back in. So you kind of have to do both, I think. I wouldn't say it's a problem.
Let me give you a very simple example. The way I like to teach is, for example, what do you think of something is 你觉得怎么样, right? Actually, I'm not even sure this is completely relevant to your question, but
it's a phrase.
Yeah, it's a phrase, or you can call it a sentence pattern, right? You want to learn more things like this, so you can easily, you know that 觉得 means to think or to feel when you give an opinion, 觉得, right? And 怎么样 means how. So literally, when you ask somebody of an opinion, what do you think of something? You literally ask, you think something is how, right? And you do want to learn 怎么样 because 怎么样 is also a word you can ask somebody, hey, how's it going? Hey, 怎么样, right? 怎么样. But together, thank you so much. No, that becomes the second tone. It should be the fourth tone.
Oh, whoops, I wrote it backwards.
Yeah, 怎么样, 怎么样. Right. So to answer your question, I guess that you do want to learn the word, and then you want to put them together and say 你觉得怎么样, right? And then you always have the word, its own isolated meaning and how it's used in a sentence.
Yep. Short answer, do both.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Victoria, for your question. Next question. Next question comes from Jessica. Jessica asks, can you recommend us Chinese movies speaking in Mandarin? I find a lot of in Cantonese.
Yeah, it's true. There are a lot in Cantonese. That's because Hong Kong is sort of the Hollywood of...
Hollywood.
Hollywood, is that what they call it?
Hollywood.
Kind of the Hollywood of China. And so that's all in Cantonese. Like Jackie Chan movies are mostly in Cantonese.
Right. I think I can recommend a few. For me personally, I really like this director's movie called Féng Gāng. I'll list it in our reference, actually, in the description after the Hangout. Féng Gāng. And you can actually find them on, I will list a few YouTube link. They're free on YouTube, and also they have the English subtitle. This director makes really funny movies, and not only when you watch the movie you can learn some Chinese, you can learn the Chinese humor, because actually if you think about, sometimes I think Chinese people cannot be funny because I know I'm almost going to the wrong dangerous place, because there are two things usually people make fun of, right? Politics and sex, right? But usually these are the two taboo things actually in China. And then you think, oh, how can Chinese ever make a joke? What do you ever make fun of, right? So by watching these two movies by him, you can understand where the Chinese humor comes from.
And you said it has English subtitles on YouTube?
It does, yeah.
What about Chinese subtitles?
I don't think so. Maybe it does. I can't remember. But I will check for you guys, okay? So his movies are great. And another director, probably you're very familiar with, Zhang Yimou, the guy who also directed the Chinese Olympics ceremony, opening ceremony. Right?
For the Beijing Olympics?
Yeah, Zhang Yimou. Yeah, exactly. And his most famous one is To Live, which is a wonderful, wonderful movie. You really want to watch that. 你看过吗？
好像没看过. I don't think I've seen it. No.
You've never seen it?
活着.
Oh, it's a beautiful. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. So
I know what I'm doing after the Hangout.
Zhang Yimou, that's another director that I think you want to watch his movie. All right.
Great.
Okay.
That was a fun one.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Let's select this one. This one comes from Jacob. Jacob says, it's hard for me to listen to native Chinese speakers speak. They speak so fast and it gets discouraging because I can't understand them even when I know what sentence they're going to say. Do you know how I can deal with this problem? Thank you.
A friend of mine had a similar problem. He said, you know what? I can't even understand what I myself say. He said, if I say a sentence and then the Chinese person repeats my exact sentence back to me, I don't understand it, which is really funny. There's some magical thing that happens with listening. And it's hard to explain. It's very hard to put into a bottle. It's hard to sell. There's just kind of no secret weapon to it, except to find people that you can understand and talk to them more. I remember my first year in China. There's a certain little shop I would always buy things from, and the people in that shop just talked so fast, and I learned how to say, just to talk to them. I said, 可不可以说慢一点？慢一点 is slower. 慢一点. And then I just stopped. Yeah, I just stopped saying the other part. I just said 慢一点. And do you know what they did instead? They spoke 大声一点. They spoke louder. They just kept getting louder and louder. And so I actually learned 我不聋，我只是听不太懂. I actually learned to say this. I'm not deaf. I just don't really understand. And I used it once with them, and they weren't offended or anything. They were just surprised. That's interesting that he would say that.
Okay, so you want to master this word, 慢一点, slow down a little, 慢一点.
Do we want the R? You usually add the R, right?
Oh, yeah, if you have like a northern accent, you don't want to be a little fancy, and you can say 慢一点, right, DR, you just like add like
just
an
add an R
at the end, just a 点 becomes DR. 慢一点, right? 慢一点. Actually, I remember I read a blog post on your website. You did mention there are like a few tips about listening comprehension. Well, for example, when Chinese people speak, we tend to drop the subject, right? And sometimes, you know, when you learn the full sentence, what's your name? 你叫什么 means you are called what name. But when Chinese people ask you, they will say, called what name? And you say, what? Like, you? Like, why did you drop the you part, right? So that's one of the things that will throw you off, because when we talk about things we're familiar with, we drop that subject. And that's one thing.
Well, yeah, and so what you can notice from what Yangyang's saying, Jacob, is she's trying to make a theory as to why you didn't understand it. And that, it sounds really cerebral and technical, but that will probably help you if you can figure out what, because listening is kind of everything stuck together. So did they use a vocabulary word that you didn't know? Did they use a vocabulary word that you did know, but they said it in a weird way? Did they use some grammar that you're not very familiar with or that was unexpected? Exactly, or was it everything put together? If you can somehow figure out what is going on that's keeping you from understanding, then you can address that specific issue. So, and 慢一点 and 慢一点 might not help with that. If it's a vocabulary word or grammar structure that you've never encountered before, it can be slow as molasses and you'll never understand it.
I remember a student told me, even after he learns how to say how old are you, right? Like 你多大? But then when people start asking him using different questions like 你今年多大? Or like how old are you this year? Or 你几岁了? Or how old are you? Or 你多少岁? Like how many years of age are you? Right? There's so many different ways of asking the same question that can throw you off. And also another. Chinese people generally speak Chinese with their local dialect accent, right? So they inject a little like local flavor into their accent. So their accent can make it difficult too. And also, just as what I said earlier, the choice of words. And Albert, you have this example about even just for where are you from, right? Like
I know, because you get asked that a lot if you go to China, or even if you stay in the States or in your home country. I suppose they might want to ask you, well, so I learned that. 你从哪里来?
Yeah, where are you from? Yeah.
And then the next person to ask me said, 你来自哪里? And I kind of heard a 哪里 in there, and I heard a 来 in there, but I didn't know 来自 yet. And it's the same exact question. And so then, okay, I got that. And then, 你是哪个国家的? Well, what country are you? You know, you're what countries? well, that's the same question, but they're using totally different grammar and totally different vocabulary. And so finally, I got so frustrated in my first year. I got so frustrated in this, I took my friend, I sort of grabbed him by the collar. I said, I want you to sit down here and ask me where I'm from in as many different ways as you can think of. And we came up with like 7 or 8 or something like that. And I wrote them all down. I learned them. And you know what? Sometimes they'll still stump you. They'll still come up with one. They'll leave a little part off.
Right.
It's frustrating. I hear you.
We totally understand that. Just here, actually for Yoyo Chinese, because we know students have this problem, we have developed a course called Chinese on the Street. Basically, we have a production team in China. Our host is actually going on the street, ask regular Chinese folks the same kind of questions, and you get to hear different answers. And sometimes our host will ask the same questions with different choice of words.
Right.
So you get to hear different questions, different answers, but they're all kind of similar. That's the way for you to practice your listening. So when you get a chance, please check out our Chinese on the Street course. So I think that really can help you learn Chinese without actually having to be in China.
Yeah, we designed that course specifically to address this exact issue, and especially the issue of vocabulary, meaning there's so many ways to ask and answer the same questions.
We have some lessons actually on YouTube. It's called Chinese Learning Chinese on the Street. Just check it out after this Hangout session. Yeah? Cool. Thank you so much, Jacob. I appreciate your question. Okay, great. Next question. It comes from, do you want to read it?
Oh, I get to read a question. 太荣幸了. It's my great honor. Looking back on your studying Chinese, what things were helpful for you and not so helpful? What would you have done differently? This is from Renee. Well, that's a good question, Renee. What things were helpful for me is kind of knowing the bad news early. The bad news is this. There's tones in Chinese. They're kind of hard, but you have to do it. Okay, so I just got that bad news over with. I'm going to do the tones. The bad news with vocabulary, because I'd never learned another language before, the bad news with vocabulary was you have to just memorize a lot of words. I wanted to kind of naturally soak it up, turn on the TV in the background, you wake up in the morning, you know a bunch of Chinese. Not for me. I had to have flashcards. I had to write stuff on my walls. I had to just memorize a bunch of words. So if I hadn't known that really early, the bad news of you have to tackle the tones and you have to memorize a bunch of stuff, then I probably would have gone a lot slower at the beginning. Let's see, what would I have done differently? Well, that is an interesting question too. As far as regrets go, my main regret in my first couple of years learning Chinese is I really felt that I was maybe a little bit rude or too aggressive with insisting on speaking Chinese with people. Because my Chinese wasn't good, so it's a real burden, for you or for some Chinese people to listen to this really horrendous Chinese. And I think I just kept pushing through and sitting on the bus with somebody and I'm trying to, where are you from now? And he's answering and I don't understand, so I'm trying something else. Well, maybe he didn't want to really talk to me. And so it's interesting now living in China, being on the other end of that, a lot of people want to practice their English with me, and I'm thinking, you know what, I kind of deserve this because I did that to them. So what would I have done differently? I might have been a little bit more relaxed about that, not pushed so hard to kind of force people to listen to my Chinese at the beginning.
You know what? I might disagree with you because
yeah.
I really think that is the right thing to do to learn a language, right? So sometimes we really have to turn off that sort of guilt or just assumption that people might be annoyed. You have to think no, people will love it when I speak their language, which is true. Chinese people, we love anybody who speaks our language. It's not just my opinion.
I know.
We really think that you are learning our language. It's so hard, and we understand. We know that, and you're putting the effort. That means the whole world to us. And I'm not even just saying it for the sake of saying it. I really feel that way.
And I agree with that too. I suppose what I mean is I wish I had been a little bit more sensitive as to when enough was enough. I remember I had one Chinese friend, I wanted to tell her a story of something that happened. This in my first year, my Chinese not very good, so really halting, looking for a lot of words. And I finished the story, and her only comment was, wow, you can speak for a long time. That's what she said. And then I realized, oh, now maybe that was a little too much, you know. But you're right, you have to try. I just want to be a little bit sensitive, you know, not to steal time from people too much. Or just specific people, maybe, not everybody.
I applaud you. I applaud you. Okay, thanks, René, for your question. Okay, next one. Next one comes from Donovan. Donovan. No. Yangyang, please say.
Donovan.
Donovan. Yangyang, please say a difficult long question in fast speed in Chinese to Albert, and let's see if he understands it. Wow, that's a
test.
Okay, let me think about it. Okay, a difficult long question.
She could easily stump me. By the way, this is not going to be hard for her.
Oh my gosh, I'm just okay.
Well, just read Donovan's question in Chinese and see if I can understand it.
No, of course you will. Okay.
I had to try.
Okay, let me do it again. 我知道你刚刚从中国回来，但是你现在是不是需要倒时差呢？
So to answer Donovan's question, yeah, I understood it. Okay, so I'll translate it into English for him.
Okay.
So I know you just came back from China, so do you need to kind of tackle jet lag?
Yes, that's exactly what I said.
Okay. So now here's Donovan. I'm going to show you an example of a way to check listening comprehension and really improve listening. I'm going to try to repeat her exact question to her in the same words, but not fast. 我知道你刚刚从中国回来，那你是不是需要倒时差呢?
Yes, perfect.
Was that exactly right?
完美.
Okay.
Perfect.
So the reason this is good listening comprehension practice, to repeat it, and it sounds weird, I'm speaking but I'm practicing listening, is I'm checking to make sure that I can reconstruct all of that same grammar. I had two little questions in there, two places that I wasn't exactly sure, and I just went for it, but it turns out I'm right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Wow, I'm impressed.
Wow. Thanks, Donovan. You gave me a chance to impress Yangyang.
Thank you, Donovan, for your question. Next one. Okay, is it fair to say Chinese people do not concentrate on tones per se, rather than learning through imitation and immersion, example, through their parents?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, the more I communicate with Chinese people, my pronunciation will improve naturally.
Yeah, that's two questions from Rally95.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, well, I think I can answer these. The first question about whether Chinese people concentrate on tones. No, they don't. They don't think about it. They just do it perfectly every time. I guess not perfectly every time, but it would be like in my native language, am I focusing on whether or not to say a or an?
Mm.
I just do it perfectly every time. I say an apple, a boy, a cat, a dog, an egg. And so I'm switching a to an based on the following word. I'm just doing it perfectly every time, and I'm not thinking about it. So Chinese people are doing the same thing with tones. And sometimes, if you ask them to write the Pinyin for their name, they might write the wrong tone. They're not thinking about what tone is my name. They're not thinking about that. So I think that answers question number one. Hopefully, the more I communicate with Chinese people, my pronunciation will improve naturally. We hope so. It kind of depends. It kind of depends on how much you're paying attention. There's people that can communicate for ages and just never improve.
Yeah, I think that Chinese is a little different from English in a way that for tones you have to memorize it, right? For English, if I speak to you enough, I will sort of catch your tones and intonation. But Chinese tones is really like a memorization work. You really have to know 飞机 is first tone, first 1-1. You know, before you can say it correctly. So will you just naturally improve your pronunciation if you speak with Chinese people? Maybe, but that's just a maybe. You really have to put in thoughts and hear them and say, okay, they're speaking the first tone and or third tone or something like that, right? And speaking of the, do we concentrate on tones? This is I don't know if this is completely relevant, but people from other provinces, people who speak different dialects, sometimes they are even struggling with tones,
yeah.
right? So it's not just you, people from like Hong Kong or Cantonese people, they speak the wrong tone or even with the wrong pronunciation sometimes.
I have a neighbor from Sichuan, and when he's talking to me sometimes, I'm always kind of like disregarding his tones because Sichuan Hua, a lot of tones, the Pinyin is the same, but the tones are different, which is really weird because it just sounds like the wrong tone. But he's just using his dialect, and it's close enough to Mandarin that I can kind of understand it. I remember 假期, like vacation.
Vacation, 假期,
Yeah, he wanted to ask when my vacation started. 你的假期什么时候开始? Or something like that. And he said 假期, which sounded, if you change this to a third tone, then it means fake. And it's not vacation anymore, it's fake something. And it's like, 假期? What could be so fake? What is that, a fake 7? I didn't know what he meant. And so I finally figured out he said 放假.
Oh, 放假, okay.
Which should be 放假. It should be a fourth tone, but he said it's 放假 with a third tone. And then I figured out, to go on vacation, so that's what he's talking about. So we're not really talking about his question anymore. We're just talking about something we want to talk about.
Okay, we gotta move on. Thank you so much for Rallies 95. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Brenslav asked, do you know of or could you recommend any good Chinese TV series with Chinese English subtitles? That's the challenge. I can easily find you many great Chinese TV shows with Chinese subtitles, but not necessarily with English subtitles. Yeah. Yeah,
you know what? There's 2 websites, and we can put these in our resources later, right? Tudou and Youku. These are the websites that Chinese people in China use to watch American TV shows. So this may not be what you're looking for, but at least we know that some of those shows, Tudou.com and Youku.com, some of those shows have Chinese and English subtitles on them, but the Chinese are all in Han, so there's no Pinyin.
Right. But
he wants a Chinese TV show.
The thing is, Chinese TV shows. The good thing about watching an American TV show in Chinese, never mind. It
would be good if it were dubbed, but
if it were dubbed, yeah.
The problem is the English subtitles. Yeah. Who's going to go and add English subtitles to a Chinese show? It's going to be people who want to learn Chinese. It's not going to be the Chinese media.
Unless Yoyo Chinese does it someday, and which we should.
We should write that down.
Yeah. Thank you so much. All right. Wow. Okay, so next one. What do you think about learning with tongue twisters? I mean, Pinyin pronunciations.
This is from Luis.
Luis, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do tongue twisters with my friends, with my students. The simple one is 1 is 1, 4 is 4, 40 is 40, 14 is 14, right?
And 10 is 10.
10 is 10. Yeah, exactly. That's 4是4十是10 14是14 40是40 40是44是44 like 44 is 44. So I will mark that. I will write that in our description part. That's a great one for you to pronounce the tones. Oh, particularly second tone and fourth tone, and S-I, S-H-I. Yeah.
Well, and also, I should just say, I make my own tongue twisters all the time using words that I think are hard to remember.
Like what?
Well, like 香蕉 is banana, and so that's 2 first tones. And then 橡胶 is rubber, which is a 4th tone and a 1st tone. Okay, we're writing them down here. So I made a little tongue twister. Rubber banana. 橡胶, 香蕉. And then you just say it. So this one's banana and this one's rubber. So I go 橡胶, 香蕉, 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 香蕉. Sounds like a little drum beat or something. That's a 2-word tongue twister.
There is a.
But
okay.
Yeah. Exactly. But it's just to help me with 2 words I think are confusing.
Okay. 橡胶, 香蕉, 橡胶, 香蕉. good. I like this one.
Rubber banana.
Rubber banana. Okay. Wow, we're like 2 or 3 already.
Oh.
Flies. So let's see how many more questions are there. Okay, why don't we just take maybe 3 more questions?
Okay.
What do you want?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm having a great time.
Me too. I'm really having a good time. Usually when I do Google Hangout, I'm hanging out by myself here without knowing how the world is reflecting. But now, yeah, it's really fun. Yeah. Okay, let's see.
Done.
Okay. Okay, so next question. Oh, yeah.
Donovan's back. How long did it take for Albert to learn Chinese fluently? Well, I don't know that I'm there yet. It's sort of fluently is one of those words that's kind of hard to.
他太谦虚了. He's too modest, really. 谦虚, modest.
Yeah, well, it depends on what fluently means. So I would say to get to the point where I was comfortable in normal, everyday commerce, taxi, all of those situations, I would say about 1.5 to 2 years. But I would be really nervous if there was some situation that I didn't know about coming up. So I remember I did a radio show in, I don't know why I did it, but I did a radio show, I think my 3rd year, and it was all in Chinese, and I was just so nervous about it because I knew that anything can happen and I'm going to mess stuff up. And so would I say that I was really fluent at that point? Well, I was kind of, but not really comfortable, not relaxed. So then a couple more years go by, and I'm even more comfortable and more relaxed. So I don't know. I would say 3 years. Probably by the end of my 3rd year, I felt more relaxed in a variety of situations. But even now, there's times when, you know, if I'm watching the news or something, or we want to discuss advanced political or technological issues, I'm sure I'll get stumped by a bunch of stuff. So I'm not sure that I'm there yet.
No, actually, I think you are, because each time when we design a course, we talk actually in Chinese. We can plan out the whole course in Chinese completely, no English. So yeah, come on.
Well, and again, that's very kind of you. But that's a field that I'm really used to talking about. Okay. Linguistics, education. This is our field. Okay. So yeah, I know we want to know a kind of timeline. Let's say 3 years.
All right. Thank you so much for your question, Donovan, right? Okay, the next one. Okay, can you recommend any movies, videos, films, TV shows with subtitles that I can get that would be appropriate to supplement learning for a relative beginner? I probably know 400 to 500 words, but can't fluently construct or understand spoken sentences. There's a website called FluentU. And FLUENTU.com, and they take some YouTube clips, the Chinese YouTube clips, and dub it with the subtitles. So check it out, that website. They're pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and they have a lot of short things too, like commercials and music videos and things, and you can kind of see what works for you.
Yeah.
And it's split into different levels. So a relative beginner, you should be able to filter those by beginner videos, see how that works.
Yeah, of course. Also check out Yoyo Chinese. We have a bunch of videos actually on YouTube, and you can sample them first to see how those lessons are structured. Either Chinese on the street, authentic Chinese video dialogue, and our intermediate Chinese, which Albert helped write. Basically, I took a dialogue, intermediate level dialogue, and I break it down, explain to you what people said and how they said it and why they said it and how to use certain phrases. And then you just listen, and then you listen to my explanation. So, yeah, check it out. All right, so let's see which questions you want to take.
Well, here's a plus 11. Here's a plus 10. This one's been on here for a while. Should we see that one?
Sure. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I read it. 你好. What's the difference between 天 and 日 with the definition day? Okay, thank you from Wesley. Thanks, Wesley, for your question. This is a vocabulary question. And you know what? Sometimes it's hard to just pin down things like this and say, well, 天 always means this and 日 always means this, because they both mean day. but they're used in different situations. So it's kind of like if I were to ask in English, well, what's the difference between gather and accumulate?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they kind of mean the same things, but you wouldn't necessarily always use one or the other. So I think the best solution to this is to just learn phrases or words, like two-syllable, three-syllable words that use each of those, and just memorize those, and then you'll kind of start to get a sense for it.
Okay.
So let's give an example.
Like Sunday, you can say 星期天 or 星期日, right? Both are okay?
Right, so this is a rare example where tian and ri are interchangeable. It's usually not the case. So 星期天 means Sunday, and 星期日 means Sunday also. Here, I'll hold this.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's write down 第二天.
Okay, 第二. The second day?
Yeah. Now, would you ever say 第二日?
We don't.
We wouldn't say that, right?
No.
So the second day is 第二天. And then let's also give...
like how long have you been in China, right? So you say, hey, 5 days. You say 5天.
Right.
You
That's
don't
also
say
天.
Yeah. You probably just want to learn the difference through real life examples rather than try to memorize a bunch of rules.
Right. And another good one for 日 would be like a holiday.
Right.
节日.
节日, yeah. It's holiday. 节日. The second tone, fourth tone one, right? What? No. 节日.
节日.
节日. Holidays. Great. Okay, so you see, you just learn the difference between them in the actual words.
And besides Sunday, none of those could be switched. None of them could be swapped. So it's not really optional. You just have to learn which ones go with which ones.
Right. Okay, thanks. I think let's take one more question. What do you think?
Okay.
Like, you pick.
I'll pick. Oh, how exciting. I get to pick. Let's see. Let's go down a little bit.
Wow, there's so many questions.
I'm just looking for the pluses.
Okay.
So there was a plus 10 up there. What was that?
There's,
Plus 10 means 10 people voted it, right?
right, right.
There was one that was there.
Here. Okay.
Let's do that one because it's plus 10. Should we click it?
Oh, yeah.
This is from Stephen. Is there a way that those that have a common interest to help each other's oral Chinese communication have a forum to mix and match people to practice? Do you know about that?
A forum.
Like an online forum, probably, right?
There's a Chinese forums.com, but I'm not sure if they can do that. But just what I said before, you can easily find a language exchange partner to practice Chinese with. And I do think at the beginning, you want to practice with the native Chinese speakers. You know, later on, you can actually practice with your fellow learners. No problem, that's great. But at the beginning, you do want someone to actually correct your pronunciation, so you want to go with a native speaker. You know, italki is the website I mentioned, and also you can go to Meetup or Craigslist and find a tutor. So.
Yeah, and yeah, italki, is that the one you mentioned
italki,
before?
Yeah.
There's a lot of good questions on here, actually. Should we just do one more?
Okay, sure. Do your pick.
I know. Well, it's hard to pick, but I want to talk about this one.
Okay.
Okay, should I read it?
Yes.
This is from Isanta00. Okay. People from different parts of China have different accents. When I pronounce a word with S to some person from Beijing, they will say it is correct. The same word to someone in southern China, they will say I said it wrong. It gets confusing. Solutions? So this is what
question.
Well, this is what we were talking about earlier. Is you need to figure out what the regional sort of thing is that's going on. So S and SH change. So si and shi sound the same in southern China. Z and ZH, z and zhi sound the same. And you need to kind of figure out those rules. But if they're saying, well, you said it wrong, then again, I just want to emphasize, don't trust everyone. Some people might not really be qualified to give advice. Yeah, N and L is another one.
Yeah, like in people from the southern part of China, like Guangdong province, they say 牛奶, you know, which is the milk, right?
牛奶. Yeah, here, I'll hold this.
They will say 牛奶, which sounds really weird to my ear each time I hear them say that. For example, sorry. 牛奶 means like milk, right? But lots of times people from the southern part of China will replace N with L, so they say 流奶, which is
that actually is a third tone. You had it right.
Oh yeah, right. Oh, yeah. So
she's thinking and talking. It's hard to do.
牛奶, right? So and also people from Taiwan, they always omit the H part. For example, 我知道, they will say 我知道, right? 我知道. 你是我是 for example, 你是谁 who are you? They say 你是谁 right? They just drop the H. So you probably want to be aware of these differences when you hear them. So these are the basic ones.
Yeah, but when they say it's wrong, it does get confusing. So don't trust everyone. Find somebody that you can trust, somebody that you know will tell you the accurate information. Because there's lots of times, I teach a big class of 20 students at a time, and then they leave, and then another class of 20 students come in. And I've learned to just not ask my students because they'll all disagree with each other, and so just make sure you're trusting the right people.
Alrighty. Wow. Hey.
Do we have to click done on that? Or?
Okay, let's click done on that.
I don't know how it works. So.
Anyway, so we should just thank everybody for participating in this Google Hangout, especially those ones, those of you who are actually getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
That just really touched my heart so much. And
很感动啊。
感动, yeah, definitely that's the word I want to use. 很感动, 非常感动。真的谢谢. Thank you for being here with us, and we had lots of fun with you guys, right?
Yep.
All right. So we're going so for all the questions that are not answered, and I'm going to do more Google Hangouts in the future, so feel free to ask them to me in the future. All right?
Great.
All right, good, everybody. So should we say goodbye? 再见.
再见.
再见. All right.